What is up, everybody? Glad to have you here. Just got to bring on my co-host. There we go. Here we go. Here we go. How's everybody doing?
How's it going, Spencer?
Brian, good. How are you, man?
Doing great. A
Awesome.
little gloomy in Tampa, Florida today.
It is so beautiful here in Birmingham, Alabama. It's gorgeous, about 72 degrees outside. Man, so good. We'll just give everybody one more minute and then we're going to go ahead and kick it off. And Brett, if you want to go ahead and share if you're running this, if you're running the slideshow, then you can go ahead and share your screen and we will kick this thing off.
You know it. Had to turn on my audio real quick. Having just continued issues with computer audio here.
What you don't you mean you don't have a podcasting mic like I do? Like what's wrong with you
No,
guys? Oh, you guys are
yeah.
working. Never mind. I'm over here playing around with microphones and stuff. Okay. Let's go ahead and let's go ahead and kick this thing off. We want to be as efficient as we possibly can. So a few housekeeping notes real quick before we begin. There is a webinar chat if you just want to like make comments or chat in there, you're more than welcome to do that. But if you do have questions, you can put them in the Q&A box. So if you go down to the bottom there in Zoom, there's a Q&A box. And if you have a question, feel free to put it in there. We'll either get to them while we're going or we left some time at the very end for some questions and we can answer all your questions then. Completely up to you. But go if you went ahead and drop them when you think of the question, drop them in the Q&A thing and we'll get them there. Just don't put them in the chat. I've only got one screen, so yeah, so I'm trying to monitor all this on one screen. But go back one more, Brett. Just wanted to introduce our guest to you. You see, I'm here, but everybody, you know that I'm just here as a mascot, and I'm really just the host. I have the controls, but I'm most definitely not the expert. So we have brought Brian Shaw in. Brian is our pricing manager. If I'm ever looking for comps, for rental comps from anywhere in the United States in any one of our markets, I'm reaching out to Brian and he's giving me some incredible insight for pricing. And then we've got Brett Drevlo, who is our director of leasing. And Brett is fantastic. And so I'm excited that you all get to meet these two and hear from them. They've been absolutely they've provided tons of value for us here at Evernest and they continue to knock it out of the park. All right, let's go ahead. All right, so why do we do these webinars? Well, really, this is our passion. We love to educate investors. We love to give back to the community, whether it's to property management professionals or whether it's to real estate investors being our clients, or if you're not even a client, we love to just help investors make informed decisions. This is one of our passions. This is why we actually built out a studio so that we could produce content that could help people make great investment decisions. All right, next one. And so to that point, two things I want to show you real quick. We've got two podcasts. One is called the Evernest Real Estate Investor, and I host that with a real estate professional here in my city. And we just talk all things real estate. We interview real estate investors from around the country and get their take on what's happening in the market. I think that one's a good one. If you're a property manager and you're on here, we obviously have the Evernest Property Management Show that is really for owner operators of management companies. And then lastly, I'll promote next slide, Brett, is just our YouTube channel. If you ever like, we produce a lot of content on this YouTube channel, shorts, long form, all kinds of things. But if you ever want to check us out, there you go. So that's it. That's the only promotion we're doing. And I am going to turn it over to Brett and Brian to present the material. And again, if you have questions, don't hesitate to put anything that you want to know in the Q&A box.
And, just before I step into the agenda, I just want to call out how great it is that you can see Spencer's face on the screen 5 times here on in live, and then four thumbnails. So just gotta
I'm all about
quick.
self-promotion, apparently. Apparently that's what I'm best at.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the intro there, Spencer. Thanks for sharing a little bit about some of our education that we share. We're big believers in this, and that's why we want to be doing this. Couple of quick things just to share with you what we'll be going through. We've got renter trends. So this will be, we'll start with talking about some of the big things that we've heard from some of the renters that had engaged with us. A couple of data points. What we're seeing from a demand perspective, both with our internal Evernest data, as well as what we can access with our ILS partners. And then Brian will opine on all things pricing. And of course, it's not a webinar without Q&A. So let's roll here with fee transparency. It's been a big topic of Q3 for those of you that work in the space. For those of you that don't work in the space, maybe you're one of our owners or an investor that works with us. Fee transparency is effectively disclosing all fees along with rent as the first price that you see on listings. It's like I said, it's been a theme of Q3, somewhat a delayed response to the publicly traded Invitation Homes. There was a settlement a little over a year ago for not disclosing fees on listings. And so kind of since then, different ILS partners, so Zillow, Apartments.com, Realtor.com, all these different partners have been figuring out, okay, how do we get some of these updated fees and how do we position prices on their websites? And then for property management companies and property managers like ourselves, we've been trying to figure out how do we list fees so that we're not subject to the same liability. More and more regulations have been kind of rolling out on this. Las Vegas, or Nevada, I suppose, we have a presence in Las Vegas. Nevada rolled out some legislation on this on the 1st of October. Colorado's rolling some out next year. And then there's a bunch of other smaller jurisdictions that have rolled out ordinances on fee transparency, which again is displaying kind of a total price. That's all your fees and rent kind of summed as the first price you see when you look at a home. So it's changed the game a little bit for everybody. It's created some friction for some of our owners and partners that we work with. Right now we've got rents contracting, which Brian will speak to in a little bit here. But as rents are coming back, our owners have been making price adjustments to help move their homes along. And along with that, we have seen that as we add our fees into listings, we've had owners asking, hey, why is my price showing higher than it was before? I just reduced my rent $50. How come I'm not seeing the full effect of that in my changed rents? So it's been some friction there. So it's not all bad, though. The good thing is it's increasing transparency and trust with customers. Data point out there, I think Zillow put this out, is that I believe it's 57% of renters immediately stop considering your property when they hear about fees that they didn't know about when they clicked on your listing. So silver lining here is everyone in your market is doing this if your market's subject to this. So just a little bit of education on that piece. And then rolling over to pets, a couple of good items here. 86% of all listings on Zillow have pets. 58% of renters have pets. So, why do I bring this up? As demand and rents tighten up like they are right now, even over the entire course of the year, I suppose, some of these smaller details are a pretty big difference maker. Along this is at the top list. If you kind of think about, 58% of renters have pets. If you're not allowing pets, you're potentially restricting half the renter pool from looking at your home. We hear a lot of concerns about this from our owner base. Sometimes owners are declining to allow pets as they, might anticipate like moving back into their home, or they might be concerned with damage. Evernest has like programs to handle this type of stuff. But just something to keep in mind, 74% of Evernest owners are only allowing pets right now. So it's an opportunity that we're pushing all of our owners to consider. And a bit of an anecdotal note here is before I move on is, it's a bit of a point to kind of know your market, know your asset class. Asset classes and rent amounts have a lot to do with, renters that have pets. So if you have like a really low rent property, statistically, you're less likely to have a renter with pets, whereas a property with higher rents, you're more likely to have a renter that will have a pet. So just something to think about, know your asset type, know who you're marketing to, as some of these types of things have a disproportionate positive or negative impact on your marketability. And then I want to step over to EV chargers. This is one I pulled, I was just looking through some of our data last week, and I had just noticed this. It's a relatively small sample size, but of Evernest listings that had EV chargers where we were marketing them, they performed really well. So I just kind of looked into what percentage of listings out there, single family properties, have EV chargers. Only about 5% have EV chargers. And so what I saw was Evernest listings that had an EV charger had a median 16 days on market. So we performed really well. Now, most of these listings were in Denver and Phoenix. So you got to keep in mind, markets, this might do really well in, high sun market like Denver or Phoenix, maybe not so much out in, maybe Mississippi or Alabama. It's, not quite as common out there. Spencer, any thoughts on this one? Knowing your market, any insights?
Yeah, no, I was just going to go back to the pet thing real quick. One way that when I always was talking with investors, I would just tell them, I strongly encourage them to consider pets, and the ways we can mitigate some of the risk with pets, if you're worried about that, is we can limit the number of pets. We can limit the type of pet, like you could say dog, no cat, or cat, no dog, and then even limiting the size of the pet, right? So we can say, hey, nothing over 20 pounds if you're worried about a dog maybe damaging hardwoods. But other than you throwing a little shade at Alabama, we have EVs here, Brett. I mean, I know we're Alabama, but we still have them.
Well, anyone that knows me knows that I gotta throw shade at states that have humidity. Just I'm not cut out for it.
That's right. No, I get it.
So yeah, as we moving on to self showings, I really wanted to get this in there. This is I get this question frequently from owners, property managers. So quick one on this. So Rent Engine, another great group that I like to follow. They released almost identical data to this last week. So as we hit slower periods, low demand, or even maybe like low conversion, I'm always getting asked, why are we not doing more agent showings? Why aren't we trying to close in person? So for one of all, so this is looking at all the Evernest properties leased since June 1, which I'd have to look and see how many homes exactly leased. It's probably somewhere around 2,000 homes. The median days on market is 4 days shorter for homes that did self showings. And then to the second point here, 78% select self-showing over agent showing. So we had a cohort of properties where we were doing both agent showings and self-showings, and the customer can pick between the two. And of all of those tours selected for that cohort of properties, 78 expressly selected self-showings over agent showings. So why are they shorter? I know some people might say, that just doesn't make sense. You got no one there to push people to make decisions. Timeliness is a driver. So I think about how customers are scheduling tours and, when they're trying to do that. So 89% of all tours scheduled are scheduled at the time the lead is generated. So on that side of things, speed is key. So customer being able to get into your scheduling system and select a time for right now that works for them is key. Now, customers just don't want to wait to schedule showings. They're less and less appreciating salespeople present, and that's supported in show rates too. So the agent showing kind of like show up rates of customers are less than half. In addition to this, even Evernest, we're able to schedule on demand with agent showings. For properties where we have the ability to schedule agent showings same day, next day, 7 days out, all of those options, in excess of 70% of customers are scheduling a week out. And the show rates for those tours are significantly lower. Our data shows that customers for same and next day showings, they're showing up 80%, for same day showings, next day 50%. And then as you tail off a week out, which is where most agent showings are scheduled, are down by, or I believe it's around 20%, if I recall that data right. The kind of, you combine all these things together, the takeaway is customers want to be able to schedule. They feel comfort and freedom of scheduling self showings sooner. And the data supports that when customers are scheduling for showings to happen sooner, they're showing up more often too. Spencer, any takeaways for how the self-showing world has changed over the years here?
Yeah, we've been doing this. We've been doing self-showings for the past 10 years, I think, is when we started. And I would just say, if you think about when you're in a department store, or maybe you're going to buy a car, you don't necessarily want somebody following you around and asking you questions about it all the time. So to some extent, with the digital age, it's just easier for people to schedule than go see it. I mean, I can imagine when somebody's trying to make a decision and they see a property, they're ready to get into it. And unlike the retail, real estate market where you have a open house where people are just hanging out and a showing agent is there, we don't have that in the rental world, right? So it does take time to schedule one of the agents to go out there and meet the potential resident. And so this is all about speed and convenience for the potential resident, and it shows in the numbers that they respond to these self-showing the way that we do this.
Yeah, I want to point out too, Spencer, you mentioned this the other day, that the challenge with agent showings is you're trying to merge two schedules together. You're trying to get the schedule of the customer and the schedule of the agent to match up in a time that works. And when you put customers through kind of that predicament, you just encounter some friction where they're clicking through options and they're seeing like, hey, this agent can only be here Tuesday from 9 to 10 a.m. I'm working. So self showings helps us just bridge that gap. So for those of you out there that are kind of thinking, why are we not doing more agent showings? This is why the data shows us that this is effective for customers, both from a convenience and what percent show up standpoint, and then also just outcomes, leasing properties faster.
And one thing else to note is that like renting a house is a lot different than buying a house. So when somebody's renting, they're making decisions very, very quickly. And so when you schedule a week out, there's that 6 to 7 days in between there, they're still looking at properties. And this is why they're no-shows, is because they're making decisions before that 7 days, before they go and tour your property. When you're buying a property, obviously it's a lot longer process and you want to be more careful, but people are making decisions faster when they're renting, obviously.
Yeah, it's a great point. Great point. As we move over to reduction versus concession, this has been a big one, as well as we've been talking with owners over rents contracting here especially over Q3. Not all concessions are created equal. Really important to understand that. We're seeing right now that any type of concession offering is more effective on lower rent properties. I would put that line at sub $1,400 a month product. And then anything above that, we're seeing standard price reductions as more effective. Brian, do you have some comments on this?
Yeah, I think I want to point out, just giving you an example. If we waive an application fee on a $900 home, it's typically viewed as a much larger expense for that applicant. Versus if we're dealing with a $2,000 listing, chances are that prospect, it's not as big of a deal. So really across our tool belt of concessions that we can offer, we have to be mindful of what the price is and who that applicant is.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brian. And the last one, this is a good segue into my next slide too. I've got some more data on our credit and income, but qualifications has been a topic. So household credit is declining year over year. This is both individual applicant level and the group average of the group applying. I mean, the household income is rising this is the household level. So we'll talk about that here in a moment. Industry-wide, this is the theme. We're hearing this from other publicly traded real estate investment trusts as well. Throughout 2025, at the beginning of this year, so we started at an average of 1.4 renters per household. So that's, renters 18 plus. And then fast forward to today, we're at 1.8. So it's a 0.4 renter per household increase. It's been a consistent rise throughout the year, not a ton of bumpiness. So what could we take away from that? The overall theme here is you've got more people, more applicants grouping up together for rentals, and then you've got for multiple reasons. You got people struggling to qualify from a credit standpoint, but then also rent affordability and rent burden just remains an issue. That's not necessarily a new topic, but as we kind of pop into some of the details here, so on the left, we've got rent to income by household. Individual applicant follows kind of a similar trend here. It's albeit a less bumpy. So a lot of this has to do with more renters per household is kind of the takeaway from this. From the start point here in 2024, it's a net negative trend. However, you kind of draw that line at 2025, which is a little bit past the halfway point there. The trend is positive. So this is, as we break this down and look at this by market, we see a similar trend, albeit again, less bumpy for most markets. And then over on the other side, we've got credit. Credit's down both at the individual applicant level and the household average level. And that's been a consistent trend here since 1/1/24. So, what's the point of this? All to say, review and adjust criteria. The 600 credit score in 2024 is a 585 credit score today. So applicant credit's going down, got to make adjustments, or you're going to see your approval rates affected and dropping. So Evernest made adjustments for this earlier this year. We made a round of adjustments back in, I believe it was May, and then we made another round of adjustments here back in October, and we'll likely have another round of adjustments coming around 1/1. So, all right, let's talk about lead sources. I feel like all these slides here are just a list of all of the questions that I get from Matt, our COO, asking about what's coming from where. So maybe I should, just keep that in mind. Every time he sends me an email, I should save it and say, hey, use this for the webinar. So lead sources. Over on the right, I'm showing you what we're getting kind of as a distribution of all the ad sources that we do deals with. Now, all things are not created equal here. For the most part, Zillow remains on top. That's kind of your default. However, it's really important to kind of monitor. We're seeing a lot of variance and wiggle room through the markets. So I call it a couple of markets over here on the left. We see, Jacksonville, 40% Zillow. Apartments.com has a really nice number 2 presence there. And then, we also see Apartments.com leads converting higher than, Zillow from a lead to lease kind of net standpoint. And then I also throw the number 3 lead source in here too. I feel like this is interesting because you see quite a bit of variance here by market. By the way, for anyone curious here, this is all of Q3 average. So we have a good sample size, even though our presence is a little bit smaller in some of these markets than others. But, Detroit, Cleveland, Jackson, those are some of our larger markets. So pretty healthy sample size here. RentPath, we've been seeing kind of moving up the list. And then Rently up there with Jacksonville is the number 3 lead source. I think that's an interesting one. We moved to Rently as like our touring and syndication platform back in Q2 and kind of May, June, that timeframe. So that's a bump of leads that our owners are seeing that they're not necessarily paying for. So that's a nice added benefit with that adjustment that we made. Let's see, that's about all the notes that I've got here. Let's roll over to some regional insights. What are we seeing from a demand perspective there?
Hey, Brett, real quick before we move on, I had a question from Alex. And just remember, if you have questions, put them in the Q&A box, but I'll read this one from the chat. He says, do you see a correlation between prospects' income and credit in pre-screening to conversion rates?
Yeah, I suppose, could you read the question again? Just kind of thinking it through.
Yeah, do you see correlation between prospects' income, credit from pre-screening to conversion rates?
Yeah, I would say we'd have to probably look into it a little more. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, or is it more, do you see more of the correlation between like speed to lead, how quickly that we can get them in that property?
Yeah, kind of a long topic I've been, kind of talking about here for years here is like trying to understand like what types of things like drive a renter to both lease like faster, but also like get that lease to stick. And, something that we hear is like, you've got what's called like an educated renter, someone that knows like everything, someone that's generally not asking questions about your qualifications because they know. I think there's like the cohort of customers that are asking about your qualifications, and just purely statistically, people that are asking about qualifications are less likely to, get across the finish line at the end of the day. So, very generally, I think like your people that aren't asking about those types of things tend to have, better credit and income. So, it's a hard question to answer, Alex, because I see quite a bit of bumpiness regionally. Like what we see in, for instance, California and Washington states specifically, we tend to see kind of the applicant or like number of applicants in order to get a lease lower than say, really anywhere in the Gulf or the Sun Belt. So talking, Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama. I did, in prepping, some of the slides here, we did have a graph together. It might be good to, I can send you this, Alex, count of renters or count of applications to get a lease. And what we have seen here over 2025 is actually surprisingly kind of bucks what you would think is less group applicants are needed in order to get a lease. So I believe it was a year ago today, it would take us an average of like 2.1 applications to get a signed lease, meaning, roughly 1 in 2 were denied. Today, we're down to about 1.3 group applicants in order to get a lease. So more consistently, people are applying. I think, some to do with that is, kind of moving around our criteria. But we're finding that renters are, we're able to get them qualified a little bit better today than we were a year ago. So, all right. Well, I'll step into the regional insights here. A couple of good items here. I've got average leads per property in October. I think it's just kind of good to look at the raw number here. Brian and I were joking that, Fort Myers is always throwing off our data because Fort Myers, when they go from an average of 3 leads a month to 2 leads a month per property, makes Fort Myers look like it's doing a lot better than it really is. So I gotta get just raw counts in there, and we got percent leads percent down since June, and then month over month to give you kind of a sense of like where are we at in terms of have we fallen and hit the end of the cliff of seasonality, or are we still working our way down? So a couple of things on this one here. The mountain region is really, really struggling, both in an overall sense and then like a market to market level within. So this includes like every major market in the state of Colorado, Nevada, Arizona. That's kind of what this cohort is here. And, they're all having struggles for different reasons. Colorado really struggling on a rent, kind of from a rent perspective. And then Arizona, a demand perspective. And then Las Vegas is kind of getting tied up between the two of those things. Sun Belt, and then some other markets within the Sun Belt are still seeing some delayed response from the COVID migration issues following the influx of the COVID years. So this is especially present in like Houston, less so Austin. Austin's having demand issues and rent issues. Rents continuing to fall back from the huge supply back in 23, 24 there. But Houston really struggling over there. San Antonio, and then Dallas-Fort Worth, that group is struggling too. And then I did mention Colorado earlier, but be remiss not calling it out. I'm from Colorado, so I feel like it earns a special spot in the webinar here. Colorado markets are seeing rents retracting for the first time, kind of over a year-to-year level for the first time in 15 years. So 2024 saw a 20,000 unit delivery on new supply in the greater kind of the whole Front Range metro. You could group it as one big metro. Population growth has been about half what it's been in the last decade. And that's kind of all of those things together are really driving vacancy and rents. And then kind of the last piece I want to touch on here, and Brian would love any of your thoughts on any of these markets and asset classes. Midwest and West Coast are doing well, or well, I suppose better comparatively. California is really carrying West Coast performance there. Those markets are surging back with people over the last year or two really starting to move back. Midwest is generally more stable. We're not seeing the sharp rent decreases that we normally do. So markets like Cleveland, Detroit are doing a little better. And then also Kansas City. I think Kansas City's a market that isn't getting enough attention. Brian, any thoughts on any of these markets that I've called out here?
Yeah. So first off, I mean, rent performance, I think when I'm thinking about Denver, Boulder, just that Colorado market in general, it really hasn't been hit across all property types as bad as others. So a lot of the new supply that was added, it has really hit the apartment inventory far more than the single family inventory that we have. So as a result, apartments definitely taken a big hit, especially over the last few months. I've been in contact very regularly with our team in Colorado, and we've had to have some tough conversations with owners, just really kind of putting into perspective where the market is and how much it's softening. And then you can see a lot of the markets listed, Arizona, Florida, Texas. I mean, they really benefited during COVID from mass migration. They had rapid appreciation, far outpaced the rest of the country. I'm just seeing those markets are cooling off more than others because of it. Additionally, you have a lot of build to rent in those areas too. That's further flooding supply into the market. So it's been interesting to see how the addition of new supply has really impacted our markets here.
Hey guys, real quick, we got a question from Cameron. Anything noticeable about Atlanta that you could comment on? Anything you guys are specifically seeing in Atlanta?
I mean, I personally think Atlanta's held up pretty well. I mean, they have been flooded with a lot of new supply, but demand seems to have been holding up better than other markets down south. But interested, Brett, do you see the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen rents quite quite as far backwards, and same with leads. I know that for the most part, Atlanta's held closer to that 10, 14 leads a month per property, even into the slow season here, which is on a relative basis strong. I just kind of moved to my next slide here to give you kind of a relative look at like count of leads per property per month over the month of October here, so you can kind of look at each of these states here. I think comparatively, Atlanta's down. Most markets, would be you'd expect this time of year, but I think Atlanta's doing better than most. So
One more question for you all is, are there national stats? This is from JR. Are there national stats on leads to lease? Like how many leads do you need to lease a property in urban, suburban, and rural markets? Like I've not thought about that, but I mean, obviously, be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I could probably put together something for each market, but the national average is 28. So 28 leads in order to lease a property is the national average right now. So, you kind of think about a slow season. This is a great way to, so as we go back to this, you look at like Fort Myers, right? Average of 28 leads to lease a property. For some of these markets, of course, there's, wiggle room and, but you think about 28 leads, 2 leads a month. It's going to take you a really long time to lease that property. And I think for some of these markets, it puts property managers and owners, in a position where like they've got to really execute. You've got 2 leads coming in a month. When that first lead comes in, you got to be calling them in 5 minutes, or that's a lost lead. So I think slow season, and then also retracting rents. These markets are all very competitive right now. Just as you can see, rents coming back. You've got new supply assessing heavily, so it just puts you in a position where demand's not on your side. Rents are not on your side, and that's in some ways the supply. I think I put this here. I didn't have a chance to mention it yet, but Class B and Class C assets are really struggling. Just for those of you that maybe don't work in the space, kind of a quick lesson on what happens with different asset classes when you're delivered with oversupply is you're pushing people up the asset classes as new supply comes. So as new build-to-rent communities are, put together, and let's, for example, say, the outskirts of Houston, for instance, we've got brand new homes. Really, what you're doing is you've got Class A asset customers competing to move to those homes, and the new build homes are heavily concessing and pulling those people in. And so, kind of as a response to that, you've got now all your Class B asset folks that rent at those level of assets that are being pulled into the Class A group, as the Class A group is now heavily concessing. And then the same thing happens with your Class B and Class C assets, where you're pulling people up to the different levels. So for those of you that have, a Class C asset in some of these high, oversupplied or, a lot of new supply absorption challenged markets, and then also low demand, it's going to be, tough boating. So I hope that answers your question there, JR.
Yeah, and what do you consider a lead, Brett? Do you consider that like when somebody they sign up to go see a house through the self showing, or they reach out, they call us? Like, what do we consider a lead?
Yeah, we consider a lead when someone goes to any of our ad sources and clicks contact, and we get their information. That's what we call a lead. Now we've been doing some like Facebook Marketplace tests in some markets, for instance, and when someone reaches out and says, "Hey, is this still available?" We're not calling that a lead. Those people, you need about 100 of those to give you one lead. But yeah, whenever someone clicks contact us and we get their information, we call that a lead. So.
And do you see a big difference in the amount of leads between paid Zillow and free Zillow listings? This is from Jack. Question from Jack.
Yeah. This has been a heavily debated topic as well. So right now we're paid Zillow for all of our listings. We use Zillow's data feed product, where it's I believe it's $1 a listing a day for all of our listings. And I've got data where I can compare how Evernest listings perform versus everything else in the market. And I see that when I ran these numbers last month, I believe it was like 70-something% of all of Evernest listings were outperforming everything else in the market. So, to answer that question, yes, our paid ads are putting us on top. Now, kind of something that I've published some info about this online earlier this summer. The Zillow community level ads, I have not seen the best performance of those. So that's like if you have a multifamily community, so it's separate from single family here, but a multifamily community, and you pay for like a community listings page, and you pay for the gold package of the premium. I can't remember whatever they're called. I have not seen better performance. What I see with those multifamily packages is like considerably more expensive for really the same lead gen. The challenge you find yourself in though is if you're a multifamily building and you're over I think it's 24 units, you've got to buy that market. Zillow requires that you buy that package.
Yeah.
So so I don't see the bump over there. I see the bump at the SFR feed level, but not at the community level. All right. So I showed this just a moment ago. This is earlier, kind of to that last question, I had mentioned that we've got great data on how Evernest average leads per property. We're doing about 70% better in most markets than non-Evernest listings. So our paid listings are effective in a relative sense. Now this is market level, so this is everybody else. How's everybody else doing on lead gen? So you can see here, it's slow. It's October. It's normal. So if your property's getting 8 leads a month, that's pretty dang good right now. So any time that we're doing a little bit better than that, you're probably set up better than most in the market. So as you can see here, more of the same type of theme. Arizona struggling, Sunbelt, Gulf really struggling, and then I did make that point earlier that California is really carrying the West Coast.
I just want to point out real quick, kind of thinking of that map, like for everybody who's on here, who's an investor, you're a landlord, whatever. This is why it's so very important to price your properties correctly. Like if you are overpricing and then sitting there for 30 days before making any adjustments, or 45 days or 60 days, maybe you're getting 2 leads. Like this is an indication that you need to either revisit the price, or there could be something wrong with the property, the actual property. And so what I like to think about is, if your property is on a super busy road, then you're not going to get as many applications as somebody that's not on a busy road in the same bedroom bathroom mix you're built. And then, like if you have a funky layout, maybe you have steep driveway, there's all kinds of things. If there's something wrong with your property, you're going to have to take a discount. You're going to have to price it cheaper than what maybe you see the market doing. So just, again, be as realistic as possible. Back in 22 and 23, things were flying off the shelf, and man, the properties were going crazy. But it's just not that way right now. So be very, very realistic about how you're pricing your properties. That's just my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, great call out. Is just not the time, both not the season, especially not the season, but not even the year. To conventional wisdom is put your property in market, push rents, but all the data shows that like 40% of all leads you're ever going to get come within the first 7 days. So if you waste those first 7 days on market overpriced, you've really put yourself in a tough position. So great call out. Brian, I'll hand it over to you to talk about our forecast here.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. So we are fully anticipating a return to normal seasonality trends. November 15th, it's been a deadline we've been sharing with our property managers for quite some time. This is just in an effort. We're trying to reprice as much inventory as possible, lease as many homes as we can before that inevitable holiday season slowdown. So we went ahead and compared July through November of last year with this year, just to forecast and see how the final 6 weeks of the year might play out. Right now, we're forecasting a 25% decrease in showings and about a 20% drop off in lead activity between now and then early December. Volume is expected to return closer to January. If you look at this information, you'll see, I mean, there's a little peak in right around like early December in lead volume. However, we don't see the same push in showing activity. So this just indicates that, look, a lot of people are still going to be looking, but people aren't actually gonna move in the holiday season. So how can we counteract this? Aside from the price action that I mentioned, we've been taking leading up to that deadline, we're really leaning into offering more rent concessions that are promoting extended lease options. So whether that be a 16 or an 18-month lease, this is just better aligning us with peak seasons in the future and just maximizing our potential in years to come. Brett, you have anything to add on seasonality and how it's impacting lead volume?
No, I mean, I was just want to impress on folks that, what, when can you expect things to pick up from the point of November 15th until, at what point in the holidays? So, our forecast, this is based on what we've seen this year, and our data over the past couple of years here is we always see a bump in leads at the beginning of December, but that is not going to deliver either showings or applications because people are not in a place to be making decisions yet. When's the last time you heard of someone moving in the middle of the holidays? It's just not happening. People are spending money on Christmas presents. They don't have extra cash to float a security deposit or even a little bit of bleed over and paying two rents at once or something like that.
Unless
So
unless they're being evicted from their place, then they're ready to move in the holidays.
yeah, you do. Yeah,
So watch out.
I remember. Yeah, I remember looking into that years ago. You see a lot of folks at the very end of the month. A lot of bad actors moving at the end of the month and end of the year. They know it's kind of like a year ago. I bought a new car, and I went over to the dealership the day before the end of the quarter because I knew that they needed to hit a quota, and I got a great deal. And renters, bad actors more than renters, but bad actors especially do the same. They know that that is the easiest time to get in when they're trying to press someone in before the end of the year. So we always want to be careful those times of year. But and then one thing I'm going to touch on too is we don't have it mapped out here, but what's the forecast going into Q1? What I expect here is you always see that. So like I said, we've got the little bump in leads in December. And then the returned bump comes back up just before the end of the year. And then you see the showings come back with it because people are actually in a place to start looking and making decisions. And then from there, we expect kind of a slow tail off through the middle of February, a little bit of bumpiness here and there between. And then at the end of February, similar to earlier this year, is what we'd expect both leads and showings to start kind of slowly moving back up. And we'll probably find the beginning of seasonality coming sometime around middle to the late March.
All right. So we currently have a good portion of owners that either, let's say they recently acquired their property, or maybe they're getting out of a long-term lease and just really trying to wrap their head around how much prices have softened over the last year, or over the last years to be more specific. We'll frequently pull up this chart. I think it paints a really good picture of just a lot of the trends that we're currently experiencing in a lot of our markets. So in many ways, we're still in that aftermath from that rapid growth we experienced at the tail end of COVID. You can see right here, I mean, we experienced 5 years of rent appreciation in a 1.5 year period. Since 2022, we're down about 3%. And we do continue to really kind of see that softening. We're making lower lows. The one good news that I take from this is we're just returning to a more predictable seasonality pattern. For me, this is just giving me a lot more confidence and guidance on how we approach short and midterm price action. Just because even though we don't necessarily have that crystal ball and know exactly where rents are going to fall to until they pick back up, at least we know that we can follow that pattern of seasonality. Spencer, interested to hear, I mean, what recommendations would you have for an owner just in terms of how to handle softening markets when it comes to price?
Yeah. Again, just be very, very careful. I was just thinking about when you're making upgrades to your property, if you have a vacancy, is there anything that you can add to your property that can compete with the people down the street that are offering the same house? Is there a smart home feature that you can add? Is there, like Brett had mentioned, the EV charging? Could you add that? I mean, those types of things I would be thinking about, but I would also be thinking about, like, looking at this chart, I would be thinking not about, hey, how high can I raise the rent? I just think again, to Brian's point, we're back to normal we're getting back to normal with rent prices and rent increases. You just have to be very, very careful unless you're okay letting the property sit on the market. You know, if you sit an extra 60 days without collecting any rent, it's to your advantage to reduce your price $100 a month, right? Rather than going 60 days without rent. I mean, it just financially doesn't make a lot of sense. So that's why, you know, look, from our leasing team, when we're reaching out, when our property managers are reaching out, they're going to encourage people, hey, we need to be watching the applications, the activity, and then we need to be making adjustments if we're not getting what we like. Like if the numbers aren't working out, we need to start making adjustments. And they should be looking at that every 7 to 14 days, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add, if you're pricing a home in this market, place emphasis on the least cohort of properties. If you're basing your value off of active inventory, you're going to find many times that least cohort is considerably lower than a majority of the active inventory that you're going to see.
Yeah.
So positioning yourself in, let's say, the middle of where all the active inventory falls, it's kind of a recipe for disaster right now. You're pretty much guaranteeing that you're going to have considerably higher days on market than you would if you tried this strategy maybe 3, 4 years ago.
Yeah. All right, guys, I've got some questions. Oh, okay, we got another. I'm sorry. Are
This
we
is
on the
the
last?
last slide.
Okay, okay,
Yep.
gotcha. Okay.
All right, so this table, this shows historical data. We went back to March of last year. It's going to show us the median days on market as well as the average number of price drops that were recorded for each property. One thing to note is really just how close that relationship between the two data points are. This is suggesting the higher our days on market are, the more price action is needed to lease the property. So, in other words, I mean, you can expect to take a larger discount on rent if your property sits with high days on market. Um, I include the graphic below. I think for me, this is really the secret sauce for how to lease a property quickly in the current rental environment. So the first step seems pretty obvious, and that's just nailing down your front end pricing. So our data tells us 40% of leads come within the first week. Well over 50% of all leads are received within the first 14 days after listing. So coming out of the gate at a realistic number, it's crucial to lease quickly. We've talked about it throughout this presentation, but I mean, the way I look at it in a conventional leasing world, sure, it's a good idea, shoot high on price. I don't think the time is now to do so. And it's not just because of seasonality. I mean, mainly because of all of the demand that we're seeing. So as we move to next year, I'm not seeing that change very much unless growth for jobs and then macroeconomic conditions change. People just don't migrate when there's macro concerns like there are today. So we're just not seeing that trend go away in the near term. Um, Now, let's say in the event that demand's lower than we'd like it to be, really crucial that we perform price checks early and then make adjustments within that first 2 week period. We talked about how active leads are within the first 2 weeks. We find if we make adjustments within that 14-day window, we can actually extend the high lead volume for another 10, even 14 days. So if we don't make speedy adjustments, it's pretty easy to really end up in that scenario I mentioned above. Leads flatten, and additional concessions are needed just to lease the property in the following weeks or months.
All right. Do y'all have some? We've got a few minutes for some questions. I'm going to give you some rapid fire. Let's try to, because I want to be conscious of the time. We've got about 8 minutes, so I'm going to give you some questions. I want some rapid fire answers. I got one from Paul. He says, if you're fully rented, but your rents are too low, how do you transition to more realistic rents and where do you advertise? Craigslist, etc. He's in Austin in the ATX. I would just say my opinion here is be careful. Like just make sure they're too low, right? If you do your market research and you truly are like, hey, I know I'm $200 below or $100 below or $300 below, then what's a reasonable price increase for somebody when it comes time to renew or they have a vacancy?
Yeah, the way I'm looking at it for renewals, you're in good shape if you can lock in and really just have the mindset of how can I survive this time? So if you can lock someone in on a renewal at the same price you got last year, do it. If you're below market value and you're willing to take that risk of vacancy, do it. But like Spencer said, I would cut your expectations in half, and just kind of see the demand once you go live with the listing.
All right, another
You
question.
know,
All right, go ahead.
oh, I got a quick comment here. I listen to all of the publicly traded, both SFR REITs and MFR REITs, so you don't have to. And back in before 25, they were all saying their themes for 2025 was thrive through 25 or something like that. And now a lot of the themes are survive through 26. Austin's tough market. To Brian's point, flat rents are a win today. People like what's the right price is what people are willing to buy at, and sometimes you don't know that until you're looking for a buyer. So,
Yeah.
Flat's a win.
Good deal. All right. So JR asked another question here. Is there a winning time frame in which to make the first human contact with a tenant lead? JR, I would say as fast as you possibly can. Like speed to lead is the name of the game. As quickly as you can get them, because what you want them to do, you don't want them to keep looking, because if they reach out to you, they may keep searching and go reach out to four more people. So whoever gets back in touch with them the soonest, and lines up that showing, whether it be through self showing or through agent, or if you're the landlord showing it yourself, that's always going to win, in my opinion. Y'all have any other comments on that?
Yeah, I certainly do. A good mentor always told me, sell to people as fast as they're willing to buy from you. And when people are looking at your property, that's when they're willing to buy from you. So, our, data on this is your conversion is 400% higher if you can get a customer on the phone within the first 5 minutes. This is
Wow.
what we're striving to do on the leasing side. Absolutely, there's truth to that, JT.
And it's JR. And you can
Oh,
imagine,
JR, sorry.
that's all right. And you can imagine if we leased, 2,000 properties from June, like we're getting a lot of leads. So, but we have an incredible group of people who are getting back to people in the leasing department. It's just amazing what they're doing. All right. Max says this. Hey, it's Max with Snapper. Curious, are we able to list on both Evernest and Zillow with the same listing images, considering the Zillow lawsuits with CoStar?
Yeah. So we list with the same images, with the exception that Zillow doesn't allow us to put banners or like not banners, sorry, like flyers. So sometimes we attach like our ancillary programs flyers. Zillow will block that, but we've got the same set of photos that are going to both systems in the same feed. I think this comment comes up relative to there's a thing that Zillow put out about how they can't advertise Matterports anymore due to
Right.
some sort of issue with CoStar. As that relates to us, we are texting and sharing the like Matterports and that type of stuff. Zillow 3D tours when and where we have them via SMS. We don't do it so much on the listing because things get blocked, all types of different ILSs for all kinds of reasons. So I believe the announcement that or the message that I think Matterport put out a message on this the other day was that none of their stuff can be shown on Zillow. For us, I don't think it material impacts the operation too much because we're just texting it to people anyway. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Good deal. All right, JR, is there any percent on on prospects that need to be converted and closed via negotiations with owners on certain items in the home that need paint, repaired, cleaning, pressure wash, etc.? Kind of like, hey, we'll throw in the floor mats if you sign today. Like, how much of that is going on?
If I were to estimate, probably 20%. Yeah, renters know it's a renter's market. Anyone that's out there looking right now knows, because I mean, you can just see the scale of options available in Zillow. So probably about 20%. The way that we handle this is our leasing coordinators will throw a task over to our property managers to dialogue with the owner on, what makes sense. Often, it's less generally like something physical about the home. A renter's not asking us to like, hey, can you put in stainless steel appliances or something like that? They're usually asking, hey, can you do the same term for 18 months? Or the same price for 18 months. So
makes sense. All right, Jack asked, will a recording be sent out? Yes, Jack, we are going to put this on YouTube, put the recording on YouTube. I'm also going to have it transcribed and turn it into a Q3 report that will be made available to you. So yes, we'll definitely get that out. It'll probably be highlighted in the newsletter, in the Evernest newsletter. All right. All right, JR, see your note here. Thanks for saying that. He just said excellent presentation. So, gentlemen, y'all did a great job. I didn't really have much to do with it. And then Army over here in the chat, she asked, I'm curious if you could share where you source your data from for these statistics. So I would imagine Zillow, Realtor.com, those types of resources, plus our own internal research that we all of the. I mean, if we're managing, close to 20,000 properties across the country, so we do have a pretty good source of information. And then, which markets in Denver are performing the best, and which ones are performing the worst, price point wise? So this is a Denver specific question. Any comments there?
Yeah, Colorado Springs has been holding up pretty well compared to a lot of the submarkets in Colorado. Boulder has shocked us the most. Um, Typically is a super high demand place for renters. We're really seeing struggles, especially with our apartment and townhome inventory in Boulder.
Great information. How about Richmond, Virginia? That's a question from Debbie, real quick.
I would
Glad I
have to
caught that.
look into Richmond in particular. Debbie, I'm happy to get you information back on it.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being on the webinar. We hope to do this once a quarter. We really want to keep people informed and would love to have you all show up. Keep bringing the questions. I thought Brett, Brian, y'all did a fantastic job. So thank y'all for sharing your expertise. And I'm glad you let me sit in as a mascot. All
Thanks,
right,
guys.
everybody.
you make a good mascot, Spencer.
Thanks. Appreciate it. All right. Y'all have a good one. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thanks.